The Ember War chronicles Part 8 of the Galactic War Saga. Return of the Celestial Ascendants. Chapter 1, Celestial Storms. The stars pulsed with strange rhythms that hadn't been seen since the first cycle. In the blackened skies above the shattered rim of Eterian Prime, 3 suns flickered simultaneously, throwing waves of radiation across the void like a galactic heartbeat. Not natural, not random, not coincidence. High above the molten crust, the vigilant Requiem hovered in low orbit, her hull scarred from battles that had yet to make it into history logs. Inside her command deck, Admiral Kira Antares stood unmoving, her gaze fixed on the impossible. Fractures in reality opening like wounds, revealing glimpses of luminous shapes from another realm. The Celestial Ascendants had returned. She could feel them before she saw them, an aching in the bones, a tremble in her blood. Across the Armada, systems glitched, AI screamed in silence, and ships recoiled from invisible waves. Kira whispered no command. She didn't need to. Every soul aboard instinctively knew to hold formation. This wasn't an invasion. It was a reckoning. From the other side of the bridge, Marshal Draven emerged, his black uniform reflecting the unsteady light. He didn't speak for a long moment, just watched the celestial flares tearing holes through the stars. "You were right," he finally said. "About everything." Kira didn't respond. Her silence was affirmation, a burden she'd carried since their victory at the Leviathan Gate. The gate hadn't been closed. It had been left ajar. They had hoped that sealing the rift had bought them time. Time to rebuild. Time to forget. But nothing in the galaxy ever stayed dead, especially not beings who could reshape entire planetary systems with their thoughts. From the crew pits below, Commander Vale's voice trembled as he reported real-time scans. Localized gravity collapse along the planet's axis. Quantum echo spikes exceeding even Riftstorm parameters. Whatever's coming through, it's rewriting the rules as it arrives. They weren't just returning. They were evolving. Aboard the outer perimeter ships, the first disappearances began, entire cruisers vanishing into spiraling pockets of light, leaving behind only ghost signals and ion scars. The Requiem's internal AI, Novi, flared into emergency override. Unknown anomaly is causing recursive paradox echoes across temporal shields. Risk of dimensional slippage at critical levels. Recommend immediate fallback or full quantum anchoring. Kira stepped forward, eyes narrowed. No fallback. Engage the anchors. Lock us into real space. I want a full spectral analysis projected across all 6-dimensional layers. They're not just arriving, they're watching us. As the command was executed, the viewports shimmered, warping with waves of heatless distortion. Through the swirling fractures, glimpses emerged. Cities suspended in clouds of gold, impossible starships drifting through light like fish in water, and at the center, a throne of obsidian stone rising through a sea of fire. The ones seated upon it turned their head. They saw her. Kira gasped, a breath caught between awe and terror. The being didn't speak, but she heard them, not with ears, with memory, with fear. You were her face. Her knees nearly buckled. Draven steadied her, eyes wide. "What did you see?" She turned to him slowly, the strength in her voice returning like the pull of gravity. "I saw the original Starborn, and she knows I exist. Somewhere behind the veil of existence, a galactic power stirred. Neither enemy nor ally, but something worse. An ancient rival, and it had finally woken up." Chapter 2, Echoes of the First Cycle. The rift had closed twice, yet here it was again, humming like a deep wound under the fabric of space. Commander Vale's hands trembled on the control interface, and no amount of training could suppress the primal instinct rising in every crew member of the vigilant Requiem. Not fear, reverence. The Celestial Ascendants weren't returning like conquerors. They were returning like gods. Kira stood at the observation deck alone now. Below her, the planet twisted in spasms. Tectonic rearrangements that obeyed no physics, known to the unified systems. She could feel the resonance in her teeth. The same rhythm that haunted the ruins of Dagoni's V. The same pulse that echoed in the vault beneath the Leviathan Gate. She reached for the locket beneath her uniform. It wasn't sentimental. It was encrypted. Inside it were the coordinates for the only known tomb of a fallen ascendant, sealed during the War of Starfire over 20,000 cycles ago. It had taken Kira 10 years, 2 mutinies, and an excommunication to find it. She wasn't going to bury that truth again. Back on the command bridge, Draven paced like a man who had already mapped his grave. He had read the histories, the forbidden kind, the kind that came bound in starlight-burned parchment and whispered when the lights went out. He activated the holomap, zooming out past the affected quadrant. What he saw forced a low curse from his lips. It wasn't just a Tarian Prime. At least 6 other systems had begun fracturing, each bearing the same quantum distortions, the same gravitational hymns. Every one of them matched the ancient celestial alignment from the first cycle. They're forming a lattice, he muttered. A resurrection grid. Veil turned in horror. What the hell are they trying to resurrect? Draven met his eyes. Not what? Who? The memory of the final battle on Zinter Station came back to Kira in pieces. Juro's death. The rift. The child of chains dissolving into nothingness. All of it had been real, but none of it had been final. The Ascendants had been fragmented, yes, but extinction never suited entities that could exist outside time. Now fragments were recombining. A shape emerged on the edge of her vision. A signal flare, faint, traveling through deep space, coded in the same pulse language used by the old Starborn legions. The same frequency she once deciphered from the ruins of Zaraketh. It read, "Inheritors must return the veil, is bleeding gather the 7 or perish." Her breath left her lungs in a single syllable. The 7. She hadn't heard that name since the Outer Ring betrayal. The fabled Ascendant-born who had defected from their creators during the fall of Sanctum. One of them had been her ancestor, or so her bloodwork suggested. The others? Scattered, dead, forgotten, except maybe not. She turned sharply. Draven, give me contact with anyone still stationed on the EOS archive. Tell them to search for surviving gene traces tied to the Solarius line. That's our first one. His brow furrowed. You really think the 7 are still alive? No, but I think someone or something is pretending they are. And I need to know why. Far away, in the echoing black of the void sea, an entity drifted. Its mind had once ruled empires made of light. Its voice had carved laws into the surface of moons. Its name had been lost after the Celestial Schism, but its hatred had not. It watched the Requiem from behind dimensional mist. Its hand stretched forward, claws piercing through space-time like a knife through silk. One word formed across the ether, not spoken, but imposed on reality itself. Antares. Then it smiled. Chapter 3. Shadows over the Rift. The rift's glow faded behind them as the Seraphis tore through the void, its hull still humming with residual energy. In the silence of the command deck, every face was turned toward the main display, watching the swirl of cosmic debris drift like ghostly shrapnel. They had survived, but survival was a fragile thing. Captain Kael stood rigid at the forward rail, his hands gripping the cold metal. The rift's readings were wrong. It hadn't collapsed. It had shifted. Somewhere beyond the edges of known space, its presence pulsed like a hidden heartbeat. A proximity alert cut the silence. A derelict ship emerged from the shadow of a broken moon, its hull scorched, its insignia buried under centuries of decay. No power signatures, no life signs, and yet it was moving. Alaris leaned closer to her console, eyes narrowing as faint energy traces danced across her readings. They were ancient, matching the archives on the Celestial Ascendants. It wasn't just debris. It was a messenger. They boarded in silence, the air stale and metallic inside the derelict corridors. Walls were etched with spirals and sigils that pulsed faintly when touched, as if recognizing something in their DNA. Alaris reached the ship's central chamber and stopped. Suspended in a crystalline cradle was a fragment of something alive, an embryo of light, its form shifting between human and something far older. It pulsed once, and in her mind she heard a voice. Not words, a feeling. Return. Before she could move, the deck trembled. Kaylee's voice crackled through the comms. Unidentified contacts emerging from the rift. The display flashed red. Dozens of vessels. Not hostile, not friendly. Watching, waiting. Alaris turned back to the cradle. The embryo's glow intensified, flooding the chamber in gold light. It was a beacon, and somewhere, across the void, the Celestial Ascendants had heard the call. Chapter 4. The Fractured Heavens. The Seraphis disengaged from the derelict just as the first of the unknown ships began to drift closer, their hulls gleaming like obsidian glass threaded with veins of molten gold. No registry codes, no broadcasts. They moved with a precision too deliberate for scavengers, yet too slow for an attack. Kaylee's ordered minimal thrust, keeping the Seraphis between the drifting formation and the rift's faint shimmer in the distance. Every instinct screamed that these vessels were not here by chance. They had been drawn to the beacon as surely as the Seraphis had. On the view screen, one of the ships split apart, not in destruction, but in transformation. Its armored plates folded outward, revealing a hollow core. Inside, a lattice of crystalline strands pulsed with the same golden hue that had surrounded the embryo on the derelict. It was almost as if the ship itself was alive. Alaris felt the hum again, deep in her bones, like a vibration traveling through the marrow. Her vision flickered. In a moment that felt both infinite and instant, she was no longer on the bridge. She stood on a platform of light, with the rift hanging in the sky above her like an open wound in reality. Around her, towering figures emerged from the glow, translucent, shifting between solid and spectral. Their eyes burned with the same fire as the embryo's pulse. One stepped forward, its voice a resonance that bypassed her ears entirely and spoke directly to her mind. The gate has been found. She tried to speak, to ask what they meant, but the figure continued. Its opening will decide which stars live and which fall silent. The vision shattered. She was back in the Seraphis, breath ragged, the bridge bathed in warning lights. The unknown fleet was closing in, their movements synchronizing like a single mind. Kaylee's voice was low but sharp. They're not answering hails, but they're scanning us. Whatever they want, they're not leaving without it. Alaris's gaze shifted to the derelict in the distance, the faint glimmer still escaping from its hull. She knew then the beacon was no longer calling to just the Ascendants. It was calling to everything, and everything was answering. Kaylee's gave the order to raise shields. In the same instant, one of the black and gold ships surged forward, crossing the void in a heartbeat, and halted just meters from the Seraphis's bow. The bridge went silent. The alien vessel's core opened like an iris, and a voice, clear, resonant, utterly alien, spoke across every channel. "We're the wardens of the gate. Surrender the child." Chapter 5. Fire over the dying sun. The dying star of Vekera loomed ahead, its once golden light now a sickly, flickering ember bleeding through the void. Around it, the remains of a shattered world drifted in a haze of dust and stone, fragments of civilization erased by war long before the current one had begun. It was here the first great clash would come. The enemy had chosen their battleground well. The gravitational storms from the collapsing star tore at sensors and scrambled long-range weapons. Ships moved like predators in murky waters, their outlines warped by the shimmering distortions of space. Even the most advanced targeting systems struggled to hold a lock. Commander Alara Vey stood on the bridge of the Aegis Eternal, her hands clasped behind her back as tactical readouts pulsed across the hollow display. Around her, the fleet of the Orion Accord hung in tense formation, wings of frigates and destroyers flanking colossal dreadnoughts. Ahead, like black shard against the light, The vanguard of the Celestial Ascendants emerged from the rippling dark. A dozen of their warships advanced, each vessel an angular construct of obsidian plating and glowing silver conduits, as if forged from the bones of stars themselves. Their hulls shimmered with strange glyphs that shifted and flowed, never the same from one heartbeat to the next. Even without firing a single shot, they radiated power, a power the galaxy had not seen in millennia. Weapons officers readied the Aegis Eternal's main batteries, the ship's spine-like supercannons rotating into firing position. Alera's voice was calm, but her chest burned with anticipation. Hold formation. No one fires until my mark. A ripple of movement passed across the Ascendant line. One of their lead vessels, a colossal war cruiser shaped like a spearhead, broke formation and surged forward. Its drive flares erupted into a halo of molten blue as it accelerated directly toward the Orion lines. The first shot came without warning. A beam of incandescent energy lanced through the void, shearing past the Aegis Eternal and slicing a frigate in two. The ship's midsection erupted in a chain of explosions, scattering molten debris across the black. Open fire. The void lit up. Hundreds of plasma rounds, railgun slugs, and torpedoes screamed toward the Ascendants. Shields flared, blooming into radiant spheres of light under the assault. Two of their smaller vessels buckled under the barrage, breaking apart in fiery blossoms. But the Ascendants did not falter. They struck back with precision, their weapons bending and twisting in impossible arcs, slipping past defensive grids as though the laws of physics bent to their will. A destroyer beside the Aegis Eternal vanished in a silent flash as its hull imploded inward. Another ship's shields were stripped in seconds, its hull peeling open under a hail of crystalline projectiles that seemed to hum as they tore through metal. Alera's eyes narrowed. This wasn't a battle, it was a test. The dying star flared violently, its unstable core throwing shockwaves of solar plasma into the fray. Ships on both sides twisted and veered to avoid the surging fire, the battlefield breaking into chaos. Alera seized the opportunity. Target their flagship now. The Aegis Eternal's spinal cannons thundered, unleashing a storm of hyper-accelerated rounds. 3 of them smashed into the Ascendant flagship, punching through its forward shields in a blaze of energy. The black spearhead ship reeled, its sleek armor buckling, but it did not break. Instead, it answered. A blinding sphere of pure white light erupted from its core, expanding outward in all directions. Orion ships were hurled aside like driftwood in a tidal wave. The Aegis Eternal's shield screamed as the blast washed over them, warning klaxons echoing through the bridge. When the light faded, the enemy flagship was gone, vanished into the shifting shadows of space. But they had left their message, carved into the void in burning, alien script, "We have returned." Chapter 6, Shadows over Elysium. The wreckage from the first great clash still floated in the cold darkness, torn metal and shattered hulls drifting silently in the wake of battle. Fires still burned in the oxygen pockets of ruptured ships, dim orange flickers against the black void. But amid the drifting graveyard of steel and bone, the war did not pause. The Elysium Bastion, a fortress world suspended above a gas giant's shimmering storms, loomed in the distance, its planetary shield glowing faintly like a protective cocoon. Beneath its light, fleets gathered, regrouping after the devastating ambush in the asteroid corridor. Admiral Kael stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, eyes fixed on the enemy formations shadowing the fortress. Dozens of Ascendant warships hung in a crescent formation, their hulls radiant with energy pulses that rippled like molten gold. Behind them, smaller strike wings darted between the fleet lines, escorting massive siege carriers that could rip through planetary shields in hours. The comms channel hissed before Commander Vera's voice cut through, strained but urgent. The Bastion shield integrity is dropping 17% per cycle. We estimate it'll fall within the hour. Kalen's gaze didn't waver. He knew what came next. If Elysium fell, the Ascendants would have an open corridor into the galactic core itself. The bridge crew scrambled as tactical displays updated, blinking crimson where new enemy reinforcements warped in, pinching the bastion into a tightening noose. But even as the noose tightened, Kaelin's mind was elsewhere, thinking of the brief, cryptic transmission intercepted only minutes ago, a single distorted phrase. "They're not all enemies." The words lingered like a shadow over every move. Could there be factions within the Ascendants themselves? A hidden division that might be exploited? Or was it nothing more than enemy disinformation, meant to fracture their resolve before the final blow? The vanguard banked hard, engines flaring as the fleet surged forward in a counteroffensive. Weapon batteries lit the void, lances of plasma and streams of tracer fire cutting through the debris field. On the far flank, destroyers moved to intercept a wing of siege carriers, explosions flashing like distant lightning. Then the sky opened. From hyperspace, an unknown Ascendant vessel emerged. Colossal, its silhouette blotting out the light from Elysium's shield. It was unlike anything seen before, a cathedral of black steel and living light, its surface rippling like an ocean under moonlight. The Ascendant fleet shifted instantly, rallying behind the new arrival like soldiers before a king. Vera's voice was barely a whisper over comms. "Kaelin, that's not a ship. That's a harbinger." On the tactical readout, its energy signature was off the scale. Something ancient, something that dwarfed every war engine in known space. And then it spoke, not through comms, not through translation systems. Its voice was inside their minds, resonating like a bell struck deep in the soul. "The gate will open, and when it does, none of you will be ready." Every ship, friend and foe alike, faltered in its course as the words reverberated through the void. Kaelin tightened his grip on the rail. The Harbinger wasn't here to fight. It was here to announce something far worse. And deep beyond the stars, the Leviathan Gate, sealed for 1,000 years, began to stir. Chapter 7. The Harbinger's Prophecy. The vanguard quivered under the weight of the Harbinger's presence, its immense form blotting out stars and casting a shadow that chilled even the most battle-hardened crew. The alien cathedral of living light pulsed rhythmically, like a heart beating to the cadence of an ancient cosmic drum. Admiral Kaelin paced the bridge, his mind racing. The Harbinger's message had not been a threat. It was a prophecy, and in its words lay a challenge that none of them fully understood. "The gate will open," he muttered, eyes tracing the swirling patterns of energy on the tactical display. "And when it does, none of us will be ready." Around him, the fleet's tension thickened. The Ascendant forces remained poised, neither advancing nor retreating, as if waiting for an unseen signal. The siege of Elysium had ground to a terrifying stalemate. In the communications chamber, Lieutenant Mira was analyzing a stream of intercepted Ascendant transmissions, her fingers dancing over the interface. "There's something else," she said, voice trembling, hidden beneath their codes. "A second layer. It's a name." Kaelin leaned in. "What name?" "Morith." A silence fell. The name carried weight, whispered in legends and ancient texts. Morith, the lost Ascendant, banished millennia ago for challenging the Starborn throne. Some said Morith had fallen into the rift itself, swallowed by the dark currents of chaos. Others believed Morith had survived, biding time in the shadows. Could the lost Ascendant be behind this renewed assault? Kaelin's thoughts turned to the Eclipsera, still stationed near the rift's edge. Captain Calith had been the first to report strange energy fluctuations, signs that the rift was awakening, responding to forces beyond comprehension. The war for the galaxy's fate was about to become far more personal and far more devastating. Chapter 8. Echoes from the Rift. Captain Calith stood alone on the observation deck of the Eclipsera, staring into the swirling depths of the rift. The once dormant tear in space now writhed with restless energy, casting eerie hues of violet and gold across the ship's hull. Every pulse echoed like a distant heartbeat, a cosmic rhythm that both beckoned and warned. Her comm buzzed. It was Admiral Kaelin. His voice was steady, but carried an urgency that made her spine tighten. They found something. A structure deep inside the rift, something artificial. Old beyond measure, cloaked in energy signatures unlike anything recorded. A tomb? A prison? Calitha's mind raced back to the ancient legends she had studied. Tales of Morith, the lost ascendant, condemned to eternal exile beyond the rift. Could this be the place? As the Eclipsera edged closer, the rift flared violently. Space twisted and folded, revealing glimpses of strange landscapes. Towering crystalline spires, cities swallowed by shadow, and vast, star-forged monoliths pulsating with hidden power. Suddenly, an explosion of light erupted nearby. A fleet of vessels, unlike any Ascendant or Leviathan ships, materialized, their sleek, dark hulls cutting through the rift's chaos. They fired on the Eclipsera without warning. Calith barked orders. Shields up, evasive maneuvers. The bridge shuddered under the assault, but the attackers did not pursue. Instead, they surrounded the Eclipsera, their intent clear. A message pulsed through the ship's systems, a voice resonating in her mind, a warning and a plea. The rift's secrets belong to none. Leave now, or be consumed. Calith met the gaze of her officers. This was no random attack. The rift itself was alive with guardians, ancient and merciless. She tapped her comm, sending a coded signal to Kaelin. We need a new plan. The war just became something else entirely. Outside, the rift's swirling maelstrom closed around them, a doorway to horrors unseen, and a key to powers long forgotten. Chapter 9. Guardians of the Rift. The Eclipsera drifted at the edge of the rift's turbulent heart, its shields flickering under constant bombardment from the shadowy ships that guarded the ancient passage. Each strike felt like the touch of a vengeful spirit, cold and unyielding, refusing any who dared come too close. Captain Calith stood at the helm, determination etched into every line of her face. The message from the Rift Guardians replayed in her mind. The Rift's secrets belong to none. Leave now, or be consumed. But retreat was not an option, not when the fate of countless worlds hung in the balance. Her eyes scanned the holographic map. The structure deep within the rift pulsed with a faint energy signature, like a heartbeat barely holding on. That was their target, the key to understanding the Ascendant's return and possibly turning the tide of the war. Suddenly, a surge of energy washed over the Eclipsera. The bridge lights dimmed, and the ship's systems struggled against the overwhelming force. Calitha's voice cut through the chaos. Divert all power to the forward shields. Prepare for boarding protocols. The Guardians were not just attacking. They wanted to claim the Eclipsera. As the shadow ships closed in, a beam of brilliant light erupted from the rift's core, momentarily blinding the crew. When their vision cleared, an immense figure stood silhouetted against the swirling energies, a being of light and shadow, taller than any starship, its eyes burning with timeless knowledge. The Guardian had come. Its voice echoed through the minds of all aboard, a chorus both terrifying and awe-inspiring. You seek to wield forces beyond your reckoning. Prove your worth, or be forever lost in the void. Calitha's grip tightened on the command rail. The trial had begun, and the war was about to enter a new, unimaginable phase. Chapter 10. Trial of Light and Shadow. The Eclipsera drifted at the threshold of the rift's core, its hull battered, but its spirit unbroken. The Guardian's presence filled the ship, an overwhelming force of ancient power and inscrutable purpose. Captain Calith stood firm, facing the luminous figure that radiated both blinding light and creeping shadow. The air itself seemed to pulse with raw energy, bending time and space around them. The Guardian spoke, its voice resonating directly in their minds. You seek power beyond the stars. To command the gate is to command fate itself. But such power demands sacrifice. Suddenly, the ship's systems flickered and died. The crew found themselves plunged into darkness, their senses stretched thin. Images flooded Calitha's mind. Visions of forgotten wars, fallen civilizations, and the endless cycle of birth and destruction that the gate had witnessed. To pass the trial, she would have to confront not just the enemy outside, but the shadows within herself. In the void of her thoughts, a single truth emerged. The rift was not merely a weapon or a passage. It was a mirror, reflecting the deepest fears and hopes of those who dared approach. With a surge of will, Calith reached into the darkness, pulling forward memories of loss, courage, and unyielding hope. The Guardian's light flared, acknowledging her strength and resolve. Systems hummed back to life. The shadow ships recoiled as the rift's maelstrom calmed, its secrets momentarily yielding to the Eclipsera. But the trial was only the beginning. As the Guardian faded into the swirling energies, a new warning echoed in their minds, clear and chilling. The gate will open, and with it, the Ascendant's true purpose will be revealed. Chapter 11. The Edge of Tomorrow. The calm after the trial was deceptive. The rift settled into a restless glow, its pulse quickening with a rhythm that felt both alien and inevitable. The Eclipsera limped away from the core, systems stabilizing, but minds racing with the weight of what they had witnessed. Captain Calith gathered her senior officers in the war room, the holographic map flickering with new data. The Ascendant fleet had not ceased their advance. Instead, they had regrouped, their true numbers far greater than anyone had feared. Admiral Kaelin's voice crackled through the comms. The Harbinger's warning was not just prophecy. The gate's opening will reshape the galaxy, and the Ascendants will stop at nothing to claim it. Calitha's eyes hardened. We've only just scratched the surface. The Rift's Guardians showed us a glimpse of what's to come, and the cost. Suddenly, the room's lights dimmed. The holograms distorted, flickering with static. Then a chilling transmission cut through, clear, direct, and unmistakable. To those who stand against the Starborn throne, your time ends now. The voice was Moritha's, more machine than being, more shadow than flesh. The lost Ascendant had returned. Outside, the stars themselves seemed to darken, as if the galaxy held its breath. The Leviathan gate stirred with power, and the battle for the future of all worlds was about to begin.